Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Killteam podcast, connecting Killteam communities across the globe. This week, we're coming in with an exclusive interview with the winner of the New York Open 2. Welcome, Adrian.
Hey guys, how's it going? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. It's an honor.
How's it feel to be the repeat winner of one of these big tournaments?
Honestly, pretty good. It's like it feels very much like the true definition of a milestone. Like if you were to look it up on Merriam-Webster, it's like, yeah, a year later you reevaluate where you were, and it feels pretty cool. I get a lot of perspective on like my journey as a competitive player.
Yeah, I mean, we started last year. I think you mentioned in the Discord recently you were playing heavy intercessors against Warp Coven way back in the day.
Yeah, you were like my first ever match. I was playing big 40K, and then you kept bugging me to try small 40K, right? I was kind of disillusioned at the time with the competitive balance in the 40K game, and I just couldn't really bring myself to play it anymore. So I tried a game, and I was like, hey, I got these Marines. They're beefy. They're cool. I love them. Let's shoot some stuff up like in the books, right? It did not go according to plan.
Your Death Watch definitely looked pretty cool. You know, you've got your own like gritty, grim dark style that you really love. I mean, it's traveled over onto your orcs. And you've been playing, in Brooklyn for the last year and been doing very well, obviously, especially this year. I mean, you started off pretty strong. New York Open last year, you got Intercession, took the win. And then, leading into this year where Kommandos really hit their headwind, with maybe a little hiccup this year with Void Scarred, which maybe we'll hop onto a little bit.
Yeah. Everybody makes mistakes along the way, right? Not every first date can be a success.
Yeah, I mean, you're number 2 worldwide now, so that's got to feel pretty good,
It is pretty cool, honestly. Like last year, I think I finished like 7th in the country and 27th in the world, and I was like, that sounds awesome, right? Like, and every year, you just kind of bump it up a little bit more. And I mean, if you would have told me last year at this time, I would be where I am now, I'd be like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, luckily Brooklyn's got pretty regular tournaments, and ITC definitely cares about regular tournament attendance, which helps initially. But you've done very well outside of that. You've had wins at Tampa, Nova, New York Open. What else?
Yeah, those are the big 3 this year for sure. And
you did pretty well. You did pretty well at LVO at the beginning of the year, right?
Third at LVO, which is technically like last ITC season, but like 2023. Yeah, seems like a long time ago though. That's a long time ago, January.
Yeah, it feels like a long time. A lot has changed since then. We've had the Melee summer with Colts and into Commando winter.
The Melee minute, really. I mean, they had like their minute in the sun before they got nerfed into the ground. I mean, not into the ground, but you know what I mean.
I mean, maybe goats are nerfed into the ground, but Colts probably still represent a pretty good threat on open boards and on In the Dark, where they can stay safe until they turn into giant monsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess this week's shout out on Patreon, Jason.
Yes, thank you, Matt O, for joining the Patreon.
Yeah, he got 5th place at New York Open, and as a compendium team, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was playing Talons. I think he had most of his success on 4 Talons compared to using the actual sisters.
Who needs them?
Yeah, who needs them? Just 4 golden banana boys out here crushing the Space Marine matchups.
Did he bring the sisters?
He brought the sisters. I think he lost his one match where he played 10 sisters, and he won all the matches where he played 4 custodies. So I think he might be in the position where he's just like, I'm just gonna play all custodies all the time.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, definitely helps to have 4 custodies on In the Dark. But I think even at his last match, he played 4 custodies against, I want to say like a 10-man team. Maybe even, I don't know what he was playing against, but I think I saw the last match he took 4 custodies and he was able to push up the board and just make it someone else's problem. And, 4 custodies when they're in your backline is rough.
Yeah. Was the last mission secure or capture? I can't remember.
I think it was loot, capture, secure, I think. I think the last one was secure.
Just maybe secure. No, you know what? I think it might have been capture. And I don't know. I can't remember what I played Alden on, but it might have been capture. But anyway.
But, New York Opens in the rear view. Adrian took the win. It was actually a really, really good event as far as just normal stuff. I don't know, Adrian, if you want to talk about it a little bit.
It was awesome, honestly. Like, it's always like, it just feels great because having this year, I kind of really I amped up the competitive roadmap. So I've been, went to LVO, went to Nova, I traveled to Salt City up in Syracuse area. Wait, is it Syracuse area? I think so. Somewhere upstate. I don't know. Sorry, Shane.
Syracuse, I think.
State New York. And then Nova, and I flew down to Tampa. I kind of booked Tampa because like I didn't know I'd get the initial golden ticket at Salt City, and I was like I was like really targeting Atlanta this year. So I was like, I'm gonna go to Nova, I'm gonna fly to Tampa, and then it happened that I like didn't necessarily need to, but it was still really fun to be able to get those experiences, to hit up like Nova, which is a huge event, Tampa, which is like an official GW event, and then of course, you know, the cherry on top being New York Open too, which is like nice to just wake up in my own bed, have coffee and breakfast, and then just hop on the subway with my earbuds in and just like be like, I'm here, you know, like, and know everybody like on the way in. It's just such a great feeling. It takes a lot of the edge off these events when you can like be surrounded by all the people you know and have played with like for a few years at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it was very rewarding for me as a TO, you know, just sitting back and letting everyone have fun after doing a lot of the groundwork on our end. So it was cool to see. And it, you know, it felt pretty spacious looking at it. I think we were worried initially, but I think players all felt like they had enough room as far as I could tell.
No, 100%. I did. I wasn't bumping into anybody, and like it felt really good. So no, it was honestly like really great again. I don't think it could have went any better than it did.
Yeah. We even had some surprise placings in the top 8, you know, second place. Went to Hearthkin Salvagers for real, and not the melee salvagers like Ace was talking about. Just run and gun, dwarf.
Straight up, like shoot him. Yeah,
yeah. He was, you know,
dig through some walls and shoot him up.
Yeah. What do you guys got going on outside of Killteam stuff? You know, I've got a Thanksgiving coming up. I think I'm going to be doing a turkey. I like to do spatchcock turkeys so that everything stays nice and moist.
Ooh.
In and out of the oven in like an hour and a half.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before. I don't really handle the turkey myself, but my mom's always been a proponent of like putting some like vegetables, I think, inside it, so it kind of like steams the turkey and keeps it moist on the inside during that like longer cooking period. But yeah, I'm going to be visiting family with my wife up the river. That's and then, you know, the holidays are always just such a nice time, getting to hang out with the family and just like take a bit of a break after a long year.
Yeah, my whole approach on Thanksgiving food, my wife and I made sort of like a KFC bowl, but out of Thanksgiving comfort food. So it was like mashed potatoes with the stuffing mixed in, and then like throw some turkey and ham in there, sprinkle some cheese on it, and it's just kind of like, here's a comfort food Thanksgiving bowl for practical people who don't bake turkeys, I guess.
Are you guys having people over?
Awesome.
It's just the off-meta Thanksgiving choice.
Yeah, right?
You having people over?
Actually, I'm not really sure, because everything that we've talked about has had a clash with something, so we're like, still got to nail down the exact plans, but probably going to make that crazy bowl at least once.
Got to get some cranberry sauce in there also.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely some relish or something. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I always enjoy Thanksgiving. It's fun to cook for people, so... I guess it's kind of like the same thing for tournaments, you know? You run the tournament, everyone gets there, everyone has a good time.
It's just not fun cleaning up. Cleaning up is...
You gotta clean up as you go. That's what I've learned while cooking. It's like, if you make something complicated, it's like, all right, clean, you know, you, as stuff is on the oven, you clean your bowls, and it reduces the overall like load at the end. So it's just like a small amount of stuff at the end, which is nice. But yeah, you know, topic of the day, we're here to do a little bit more of a competitive episode, you know, with Adrian here, you know, trying to pry secrets out of his noggin now that he's got Atlanta coming up in 2 weeks. You know, by the time this comes out, it'll be the week of, and, you know, catch up a little bit on, you know, just how it feels to get into the tournament headspace. Because, you know, last year you were basically a new tournament player, and now you are, you know, you've climbed up all the way up the ranks.
Yeah, I think I mean it's definitely been like a really interesting journey, like mostly like I guess definitely in terms of like my development as a player and like how I see the game, but a lot more so in terms of the tournament scene being like the mental component of it, like figuring out like what works for me, what I need pre, during, post game to like stay in the zone and like stout. Or I mean, there's always gonna be like stress, but like keeping a calm head. And also like tournaments are like, there's so much that goes on in tournaments that's kind of out of your control, and like getting the right matchups. Sometimes your dice can be bad. And it just kind of does its own thing. So right now I feel like in a pretty good spot, like not only like with my progression as a player, but the progression of Kommandos from like April when I started playing them until now has like almost like in a strange way mirrored progression, where it's just gotten like little by little better, right? And I'm at a pretty good spot right now, I think, and I'm really looking forward to Atlanta, and I guess it's like exactly a week from now, right?
It'll be
tomorrow. I'll be flying in a week from today, and then the first games are on Thursday. Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I'll be there, doing a little bit of Goonhammer coverage, recording bits and pieces with players, hopefully, just for maybe this podcast on the Patreon. We'll try to get some exclusive content for the Patreon.
Yeah, definitely. I think it should be awesome.
We had one of our Patreon players, they asked, what do you do to get prepared for a tournament? What were you doing differently early on to now? Because you probably have rituals that maybe you found that you really enjoy. I know, Chris Baki back in the West Coast. He's a no eater kind of person.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's definitely, I mean, I think I need to eat a solid breakfast. Like in the middle of the day, like the first lunch period. It was funny because the first day of this tournament, I went and I was like really hungry, and I had a huge like Mediterranean bowl at that place like a few blocks away. I went in there thinking I was just going to eat like a pick at it and like save it for later, but I ate the whole thing and I felt fine. Maybe because it was light. But then day 2, now you're like 4-0. You get a break for lunch, and you're like, wow, 2 more games. Like now I genuinely have a shot at this. There's a lot more pressure. Then I went next door to 7-Eleven and I got like a Cliff Bar, a coconut water, and I was like, that's it. I can't do anything else. Like I can't weigh myself down. It's not even like I don't feel like my body doesn't feel like I need any food. So like I eat really light between and then I'll have like a bigger dinner like afterwards. So that's definitely a thing, but like making sure I stay hydrated and getting like what I need, because I've definitely made that mistake before of like not eating or drinking anything, and then you just start to like get a little, if you forget your rules, you get a little woozy and all that. But other than that, music actually plays a really big part for me. Like when I was at, usually it's like kind of like pump up stuff. Like when I run or work out, I like to listen to a lot of like screamo, like really intense stuff, but I'm kind of very calm on listening to it. But at NYO, I was listening to some of the oldies, like from high school, some like pop punk and like some just like more easygoing, like level emo stuff. Just kind of like, I don't know, maybe it was just like reminding me of like younger out in the city and like what I used to listen to at the time. But Nova, yeah.
Finding your center, basically, just like a way to like reset yourself mentally middle of the game.
Yeah, literally. Well, I mean, not even necessarily the middle of the game. Like I think when I was at Nova, I would put my headphones on in between rounds just to drown out like all the noise in the huge room. Here though, because I was surrounded by so many people I knew, like it was hard to like not have conversations the whole time. Like more so like on the way to the first game of the day, right? Or like during lunch, I would like get away, put my headphones on, put some music on that would help, or like I would need to get in the zone, and then just like reread my rules. I mean, the rules of the factions I'd be playing, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd say music and diet, like over the course of the weekend, are probably the 2 biggest things for me.
It's definitely a thing. I mean, my rituals are like taking a cold shower, so everyone's got their thing to find their center. So definitely helps. Being at the whims of your body can definitely be rough. So if you know that if you eat, you get really tired, you get really sluggish, it can definitely be good to, pay attention to it, your own body.
100%. Yeah. And I think I also like, in terms of the mental aspect of it, like having been like an athlete most of my life, actually, I think really, really helps like maintain composure in these like stressful situations. Having played like soccer from age 5 through college and stuff, like I just like feel a little bit better than maybe some people might in like a really like stressful competitive situation.
Yeah. So we've got another question from a Patreon. This one, if Kommandos were nerfed into the ground, what kind of teams would you be looking into playing?
Oh man, don't say that. It's so sad. It's my favorite.
It might be.
team.
I mean, they're gonna get touched. We don't know how, but they're for sure gonna get touched at some point.
That's true. If they get hit by the nerf bat, hopefully they're still playable. Regardless of if they get nerfed or not after Atlanta, I'm for sure putting them on the shelf. Like they've had their run this year, it's been great, but I got to take these Kazakh out for a spin that I won at NYO, like beautifully painted and customized stuff. So I'm definitely gonna try those guys. I think like in terms of who I'd play, I've learned that I really don't like playing 6-man teams. Last year, I just lived in constant fear of everything. Like I felt like an elephant, like scared of every mouse that would run by me, like with a meltagun. So like, I don't know if I love the playstyle of 6-man teams anymore. I like to be able to activation game a bit and trade some operatives, but I also don't love equivalent teams because I feel like sometimes they just shoot and they don't connect at all, or they just evaporate because there's 7 wounds. So something in like that middle ground where it's like maybe 9 to 10 operatives, and like their operatives can kind of do their things on their own. They don't need to bubble up for a bunch of auras, and they're tough enough to take a hit. That's kind of like the speed of a team I like, which basically describing exactly what Kommandos are, so you can see why I
there's not a lot of middle ground right now for like a tough wide team that can kind of do it all. I think there's like tough teams that go all in on melee, and then there's like reasonably tough teams in shooting because you've got like medic bubbles, but there's not a lot in the mid range all the way through at the moment. Right. I was actually thinking like the blooded that you have from last year actually also kind of live in that zone.
I think I'd definitely like to try them out again. Like I thought about taking them to LVO earlier this year, but I just couldn't really get a hold on them in time. And I just was more comfortable with Intercession. And I think they just had more overall like favorable matchups. And at the time I wasn't as comfortable with the mental load of that team, being that I was still very new at the game. And I think there's a lot to be said for that when you're just starting out. Because like if you're already like stressing out about the situation, then you also have to remember all your rules, which you might not. Like you can't really need to know your own rules. So, but I would definitely be curious to try Blooded again now. And they've had some success. Like I think they won a really big tournament in Spain, and they've been doing good in the Pacific Northwest from what I hear.
Yeah, I remember Kill Scream, last a couple weekends ago now, I think 2 weekends ago, 3 weekends by the time this comes out. They did well. I think they're going also to the finals for that same player. And they're good. I mean, they're good at the end of the game. They're a team that like ramps in power rather than getting weaker as the game goes on.
Right.
Which is definitely a nice thing to have.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely. I gotta examine my options, but I'm now it's full steam ahead with Kommandos. And
for listeners who don't know, the final prize for New York Open the last 2 years has been like a beautifully hand painted team, and this year we got a customized team from one of our New York Open sponsors. So Adrian's got his choice of the litter.
Yeah, right. the good guys and the bad guys. We've got the Blooded and the Kazarkan.
Yeah, we're gonna have to retire your Kommandos locally at the monthly because they're just can't have you up there on just Kommandos.
They've been retired. I took Star Strikers out last time, I think. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of fun teams. I think maybe Kommandos get nerfed into a position kind of like Hunterclade, where they're like a fine team with lots of solid rules, but they just are not as overwhelming. Because I think before the big patch where they got the bomb squig, they were doing okay, even with the 3-4 deploys. But those 3-4 deploys would trap you into a position where if you lose those 3, there's not that much. Like the backline threats get reduced somewhat, whereas now the bomb squig is always there in the backline to jump.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, also, I don't think anybody at the time was even thinking like they would do that. Like it just seemed like a ridiculous thing to do. I don't think anybody even experimented with it too much until recently.
I think I told you when the thing first happened, you were playing. I was like, you do it more than twice. I think when we were looking at the rules, but I don't think people had been using it nearly as much. I do think that like with the bomb squig in the backline, it just meant that now you have redundancy on both the front line and the back line, which helped a lot.
Right. That's true. Yeah, that's true. The bomb squig can hide like behind a door for a couple turns, and then turn 3 come out and ruin someone's day. Yeah, or not, or they could also do nothing.
Yeah, I think in the UK they don't have Octarius played with those doors. So maybe the bomb squig is not making as much of a splash in the UK scene. Because I know, locally in America, Kommandos are doing probably better than they are in some of the other regions looking at it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Kommandos have been crushing the UK. Like they're there, but they're not taking first, second, and a third of the tournament is Kommandos or something. Because I think that's somewhere in Tampa it was a quarter of the teams were Kommandos.
Yeah, I guess it was me and Dawson and one or two other people. I think were in the top 8, maybe.
Yeah, Nova, there were a ton of Kommandos.
I was thinking about Nova though a little bit today because I was looking at those stats and like. Nova, I think it also boils down to number one, everybody who took Kommandos at Nova literally was good enough to win the entire event. I mean, it wasn't just it was like all the top players were taking Kommandos. So they piloted them really well. However, it was also a top cut. like if you could get maybe 1 or 2 softballs on day 1 and do well enough with Kommandos, like I don't know if it's like as good of representation of where Kommandos might have finished overall had there not been a top cut day 1. You know what I mean? Because like if Kommandos basically ended up stuffing 4 of themselves into the top 8 on day 1 for whatever circumstances, then they're guaranteed to finish in the top 8. Period. So like it doesn't matter if you lose all your games on day 2, you're still in the top 8 technically. So and I've different opinions on top cuts and all that, whatever else. But that's like an interesting thing to look into. People just look at the top 8. It's like, okay, how is that structured? How did you get into the top 8? What did it look like from there on out?
I mean, my opinions on top 8 top cuts is kind of not the most positive. I think right now tournaments are small enough where it just doesn't really do anything. Luckily, New York Open, we had no one drop in 41 players. And I think that definitely speaks to, having there be full stakes on the overall ladder, because, you could still get top 6, still get a prize if you're playing well, compared to something like Killteam Open where you miss one game on day 1 and now your highest placing is, 10th or 12th, or in some people's cases, 51st.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Ouch. Zing. That hurts. Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is an operative showdown, actually. Jason, you want to cue the sound?
Yeah, operative showdown.
Operative showdown.
This time, instead of being specifically operatives, we are comparing and contrasting teams. We're looking at the Intercession Squad, Void Scarred, and the Kommandos, and just kind of some compare and contrast there. That's some of Adrian's strongest teams for anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah, I think this year, these are like the 3 main teams that you've taken over, the last year of play. Intercession first, Void, a small flirtation with Void Scarred in the middle, like KTO on full in the dark, and then now Kommandos, ever since.
Corsairs was a very, passionate, fast burning relationship that ended horribly. And we don't talk anymore yet.
I think it's good for even top players to remember their humble moments, and I think the Void Scarred, that was definitely one of the tournaments where you humbled yourself, huh?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, basically what had happened, for those who aren't aware, I had been doing really well with Intercession last year at NYO, and I came in 3rd at LVO, and I finished like 1st Intercession globally last year, which was pretty cool because it was like my first year on the scene, and I was like feeling really good with them, but at the point where I kind of wanted to start dipping my toes into a new team. The way it worked out was I didn't even know I could go to Killteam Open until like a week before the event. I wasn't practicing. I didn't really think about it. And then I had just got this beautifully painted Corsairs team from one of our local players, Alex M, who does commission work and really, really good stuff at that. And I was like, hey, these guys look cool. They seem interesting. I'd seen Layla, one of our local players, pilot them to brutal effect. I was like, I want to do what she's been doing. This looks cool. Like 6 APL and backflipping over someone, stabbing them, and then shooting 2 other people and closing the door. I'm like, that looks awesome. So I tried them out, and I did really well at one of our monthlies, and I got like 7 games in before KTO. And I was talking to Layla, who was taking them and was convinced that they were like just really good at Into the Dark, which I still think is the case. And I was like, I don't know, like I'm not really comfortable with them. I don't really know all the rules. It's like a lot to go to a new tournament with only 7 games. And she's like, no, trust me, you do it. And I was like, all right, fine. Brought him, and I actually paired into Rami round 1, one of our local guys, and Hunter Clade, and we had like a 19-19 tie round 1, which was crazy. And then my second game, I ended up pairing into a guy, nicest guy, really, really nice guy. But it was like, he told me, he was like, this is like my second ever game person. I've only been playing like a little bit of TTS. And he shows up with some Ultramarines to the dark. And I'm like, this is like my bread and butter. Like Corsairs eat this for breakfast. And I didn't like turn, because I never like completely, like I never like cocky go into a match. And I'm always like cautiously optimistic, right? One of those weird Into the Dark maps, I think it was like Channels or something, maybe it's number 2, where like you literally, there's 3 lanes, and once you pick a side, like even for elves, once you pick a side, that's your side. And there's a big room of death in the middle where no one dares go. So I think I misdeployed. Then I counter deployed for a CP and messed it up even further, like somehow. And so like I have my guys in this position, and he's just walking up the board, like pretty much on like full engage. And just like shooting away, and he opens the door and just like tosses a frag grenade in, and it hits like my plasma gunner and my leader, who I'd been like staging to like do a cool GA2 open the door and blow everybody up combination. rolls those dice and he's like, "Oh, looks like I got 4 crits." It's like, "Yep." And he's like, "Okay, so I guess that guy's dead." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, okay, so on the second one, it looks like I think I got 3 crits and a hit." And I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, and then just the game just slowly got away from me, and I was like, it's a horrible feeling. And when you realize you're like, I don't think there's anything I can do. I think this game is actually over.
This is like in turn 2 or something.
Yeah, it was like literally like turn 2, like first activation. I was like, I think I just lost. And then so that like kicked me out of any contention for the top cut, which was happening the next day. So I was down in like the 6th pod, fighting for 51st place. Too, and we actually get paired, I think, to round 1, and I was like, "Oh yeah, sweet revenge." But yeah, that was a funny moment, and it just goes to show you that like
it can happen to anyone. Yeah,
happen to anyone.
I mean, it's also like a nice contrast because you were playing Intercession Squad before this, which was a very tough team. Like your models were very individually tough. You go to a team that's like paper that has to like flow and figure out what path works against your opponent. So having to change pace like that maybe didn't work as well. And then going from Corsairs to Kommandos, now you're playing a much tougher team, right? Even before 100%. The buff. Like I think you could talk a little bit about the 3 teams pre-buff on the Kommandos, because I think it's maybe a little bit more interesting with space. Because right now Kommandos sit in a very solid spot with the extra bomb squig floating around to like ruin people's day.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, if we're comparing, contrasting the teams, I think what I learned from Space Marines the most was positioning. Like everything has to be perfect. You can't make a single mistake. Because if you lose a Marine or a model, then like that's game, especially on turn 1. So positioning was absolutely key for Marines. And then also like action economy, like the absolute most out of 3 APL. But also, counter that, like learning when it's actually okay to just spend 1 APL or completely pass, because it would put you in a worse situation to use your 3 APL than not. So I think those are the biggest takeaways for Space Marines for me. Corsairs, like I think it was more about like finding really interesting and creative lines that your opponent might not see. Could not only turn their day into a bad one, but turn your day into a better one. And then, those I kind of was able to port over those 2 trains of thought and kind of get the best of both worlds in a way, because Kommandos can hit really hard. If you like the rocket with full rerolls, for example, is as good as any gun. Like if you get 5 hits on the rocket, like it'll kill a full health Marine, like guaranteed, no problem. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, the Kommandos they're tough. I mean, they're almost tougher than Marines in a way, because I in NYO, I got hit with a melt-a-gun, and he had 2 hits and a crit, and I saved my 1 save. I saved the normal. I just scratched the other normal, and all of a sudden I'm alive with like 3 wounds remaining, and I just got blasted through the chest with a melt-a-gun, where a Marine might have actually just been dead.
Yeah, the power of just a scratch definitely is not to beat.
And the mind games of just a scratch are even better than when you actually use it. Same with the squig, to be honest.
How have you found mind games being different between the 3 teams? Is there like a mind game you enjoy playing on each one? I would expect that like Intercession maybe is like, when are you going to use the shoot on death is a big one.
Yeah. Intercession, I would say there are no mind games. Intercession's just like, I hope my stats hold, and I hope you don't melt a gun to me in the face. I think it's not really a mind game, because people just like sometimes forget about it, or they know they're going to get hit with it. So I wouldn't say there's actually any mind games in Intercession. Be like, if you reveal your rosters simultaneously, like, are you going all melee? Are you going all shooting? Like that kind of thing. But Corsairs, the mind game to me was always like, I know you can reach 25 inches into my back line. Do it. Just making them fear like some crazy thing where I somersault across the board and shoot someone. But that actually kind of bleeds a bit into Kommandos, because Corsairs, I got to mention it before, but you definitely like learn to make people fear your threats. They have to respect the possibility that you're going to give an extra APL and move dash, shoot the Melta, for example, or something like that, and then also hit the button, for the mission.
Can you describe a sequence of plays that gets you to, one of those really long sequences? Actually? Yeah. So I'm sure some of the listeners probably have never seen them or heard of them. So I think just having it described would be good.
Well, for anybody who plays Corsairs and wants to really ruin someone's day, if you have a Map It Into the Dark, for example, where there's like a long hallway and there's only one door between your 2 drop zones, but it's like a long zone that goes straight. So if that door is open, it's just like an open board, right? It's been a while, but if I remember correctly, I think you start by basically you could recon dash if you want, and then you could pregame spend a CP to have 3 operatives dash towards the closest objective. As long as you end closer, you're still advancing up the board in a way. Then you like have a grenade, or you could have the shredder, which is blast. And then they're like, oh, well, the door's closed still, so you can't, you're going to move, open it, and then dash, and then that's it, right? You move through the door, open it for free with another ploy, dash, and then you're all of a sudden in the opponent's actual back line, breaking the cover of that, long piece of Into the Dark terrain. And then if they get caught out, you get like half of their team in one shot. So those are just some of the nasty things you can do. Corsairs, you can do the same thing with a grenade. And if you put it on the Shadow Runner or whatever it's called, the Shade Runner, they throw someone up there to block the door as a body. He just flies over them anyway. So that is a lot of commitment. And if you wanted to go even further, you could dash your psyker up and play and do the objective. So your psyker is now 6 inches up the board to start. He then switches places by teleporting with the threat, and then the threat does the thing. So you literally could cover absolutely the entire board in 2 activations if you wanted to. So the Corsairs, I learned a lot how to like play that Mon game. And Kommandos, it's less like they can't get that far, but because they forward deploy, it's like a pseudo movement advantage. With Kommandos, I think for me, the way I play them and one of the biggest is like just like setting up damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. So like if I forward deploy a few people who are kind of safe in cover, if you don't come out and try and claim these center line objectives, I'm just going to take them at no cost to me. But if you do, you're going to get charged and fought or shot or something else. And if you decide to come and charge and attack the guys I've forward deployed, right behind them is rocket, dynamite, sniper, knob, right? So the Kommandos are basically like, whatever you do, it's going to be bad for you.
Yeah. They're definitely damned if you do, damned if you don't, the team right now. It sounds like actually the Void Scarred experience definitely helps you play some of those mind games a little bit better.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And it also gives you like a little bit more insight into like what your opponent might be going through. Because like I've been on the receiving end of the Corsairs as well, and it's not fun. Like I guess you have to kind of just take a gamble where you're like, I don't think he'll do it. He won't do it. Or you mentally tax your opponent by showing them all these different threats so that you can figure out based on what your opponent does what is going to be the most effective for you. Exactly. And you can wait, and you can, especially with Kommandos, you have the chance now to just wait till the end to see what they do and then just react accordingly, which is the other reasons why it's hard for me to go back to power armor after having seen the green light.
I mean, you've also played against tiny short men in power armor. Any thoughts on maybe switching over to them?
They're actually, I never really loved the dwarf aesthetic, but like after having seen them played a few times, they seem like really fun. Yeah. Very flavorful. Yeah. No, I was going to say very flavorful. All their models have so many rules. Like there's a million things they do, a million tokens to keep track of, but like they seem kind of interesting. I still think they're a little underpowered at the moment, like not nearly as bad as they used to be.
Yeah. I mean, the extra inch goes a long way to making it so that they can actually position a little bit compared to where they were right before the buff.
Right. And when they get injured, they still cap out at 4 inches minimum, right? So they only lose an inch if they're injured.
Yeah, but the base rules are now no model moves less than 4. So even if you're injured, you're always moving at least 4. And because of the normal move boost, you're still also moving 5.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah, 100%. I think they're really cool. They seem like a really fun team to actually pilot. So maybe I'll try them out at some point.
Yeah, finally got a taste of them. They are pretty fun. But yeah, so moving right along into the next topic, which is Adrian's Brooklyn community. Just kind of kicking it off. If you've got any fun stories to get it started.
Yeah. Let's see. There's always like some fun rivalries in Brooklyn and like a lot of inside jokes we all share. Trying to think of some of the funnier stories. I mean, I think to me one of the funniest stories is just when I started playing Travis and I was just like rolled up with 4 heavy intercessors and just got my butt handed to me on a platter unapologetically. But I was like intrigued more than like defeated, and I was like, all right, let's run it back, let's do it again. How can I improve?
I mean, you were even playing Deathwatch at the beginning for actual raw Deathwatch for a while.
Yeah, well, that's because that was my 40k army, so I had the models and I still love the lore. And at the time, they were they would mulch power armor. Like original Phobos, like would just get destroyed. I just take 3 sources of plasma, hitting on 2s, purity seals, rerolls, like spend all your CP to make sure people die. But then like I started feeling that I think they were 11 wounds. The 11 wound breakpoint was really rough.
Yes.
Really rough.
We joke that Phobos are like 12 wound paper power armor, but Deathwatch, Compendium, Space Marines, Firstborn, 11 wounds is even worse.
An orc boy is tougher than a Deathwatch Marine who's trained for thousands of years.
Yeah, easily crushing him.
Yeah.
Do you have any fun rivalries that you've developed in Brooklyn over the year?
Yeah, I think the OG rivalry for me was probably Reagan. We used to play a lot over at his place in Jersey, and last year before New York Open, there were a few days where I would like take the bus over from Port Authority and show up at like noon. We'd just be complete degenerates and play 4 like 2.5-hour games of Killteam, and we'd end at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'd like catch the last bus home, and I'd be like, all right, man, like I'll see you tomorrow. Got to learn all the maps.
I remember Reagan coming in like this year as you were playing Kommandos, just like steaming. He's like, Adrian's just been playing Kommandos and I can't beat him.
I know.
And I think this is before. This is pre-buff too, and he was already like, "Oh my god, Adrian's
forever."
Yeah.
So the funny thing with Regan is, especially like we have this history of showing up to these local tournaments in the New York and New Jersey, and we will always get paired together round 1. He's just like, damn it, like why does this always happen to me? But yeah, so him and I get paired together a lot. Joey and I also have Void Dancer Joey, and I also have kind of a friendly rivalry, and we also have a history of getting paired together in bigger tournaments like in Nova and Tampa, and not New York Open yet, like big ones with a lot on the line, and we always run into each other at some point, either early on or in the finals, like we did in Tampa. And I think and Alex M, like we have a lot of good games, and we've gone back and forth, and I think we're a good little competitive triangle. But yeah, I think those are the main ones that kind of have some funny stories attached to them, with just like we always getting paired into each other, and Regan just being like, man, like I don't want to play Kommandos ever again. Like he was convinced they couldn't be beat. I was like, I don't know I don't know about that.
It's okay, Regan, you've finally been you're justified finally.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
Is there anything that makes you like proud of our scene specifically? Because you've been playing with us. Now you've seen a lot of the other scenes, Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like I'll turn that right back to you. Like I think you yourself and like everybody as part of the Brooklyn Rats and the tournament organizers, like just that is the thing. I think that this second year has really like made our community what it is. Otherwise, we'd probably just be like a bunch of like disjointed like groups fighting each other without any sense of like organization. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, to have like the overarching like leaders of the community that kind of organize and help and like in the right way and like very positive. But yeah, overall, like everybody in the scene, like there's really no bad eggs. Like everybody kind of helps keep everybody else in check if there's ever any issues or drama, of which there isn't too much. A lot of good competitive players and a lot of newer players who just are really into it and want to have fun, and it's a nice mix. And like the best thing for me personally is just like somebody's always down for a game. Like if I want to get a game like same day on a Tuesday night, like somebody's gonna be there. And the local shop, Brooklyn Strategist, where I get most of my games in, is actually like a 10-minute walk from my house, which is like, I would never move anyway because my apartment's awesome, but now I definitely never want to move. Like it's like I don't have to even go anywhere to play Killteam.
Yeah, it's definitely the New York thing where everything is super dense. Definitely is very nice, because now we've got a couple shops. There's one in Greenpoint, one in Carroll Gardens, one in downtown Manhattan now. Basically, it's just we've got spots everywhere.
Yeah, and there's one that's starting up in Industry City, I think.
Yeah, let me know how it goes.
Opened up, and they're starting up like a Warhammer Steam. So that'd be it's really cool just to have all these little micro breweries, if you will, of Killteam popping up everywhere. Everybody developing their own and flavor.
Yeah, and then we get our end of the year New York Open where we're pulling in all the disparate communities. It definitely feels like a nice little capstone for us. Definitely. And we'll have our invitational later, probably early next year. That'll be fun.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. Last year was a lot of fun. That was really cool. Are you going to force us to run the teams we won with, or are you going to punish me specifically this time and make me not play Kommandos unless they're nerfed in the ground? I feel like you're going to try and actively undermine me.
What should we do, listeners? I'll let the Patreon
that's
supporters vote on what we should do to Adrian at this invitational
play
tournament.
Heavy intercessors, compendium death watch or something like that. But if I play heavy intercessors, I need like 6 of them.
Well, you could take one on Justian, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. I guess I could do a Justian situation.
And that one even has 3 APL.
Yeah, I know, right?
Great. APL, and he can shoot twice, so he's not even that bad by himself. He's just slow.
That's true. He's probably the best model in Killteam.
I mean, that's what you thought, last year, right?
Yeah, at this time last year, guys. What a difference a year makes. Heavy intercessors, super underrated, guys. Don't sleep on them. The hot take.
Yeah. I know Gatsby's out here on the podcast.
Yeah, right. Gatsby's
one of our locals. Speaking of like silly players and storylines from New York Open, Gatsby, one of our locals, very good at narrative, or like very much a vibe in narrative, just likes to have fun.
Right.
Somehow topped the charts at the New York Open narrative run with like 12 kills or something on one model over 3 games.
Yeah, I know. It's Sergeant Hermes, right?
He's not the most competitive player, but by God, if we gave him a scoreboard, he was out there. I think it probably had more than 12 kills because for this year's New York Open's narrative, they had like a scoreboard tracker for one model, and I think his leader was a Doom Bolter hitting on 2s, just running around like double tapping people that weren't even relevant to the mission, just to add the tally up. Like, lose the mission, kill the people. That was the goal. Hey man, if you're top of the leaderboard, you're top of the leaderboard, right, Jason?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how you get there.
You've got a little narrative going for Renegade Wargaming, right?
Yeah, so that Friday we're doing a Escape the Gallowdark thing in Minnesota. Yeah, so it's the whole thing is into the dark, and there's like crazy effects happening on like a D20 random table, and it could be like the power goes out and like it goes dark, and now there's like visibility beyond 4 inches is considered not visible. Gravity slams that push everyone into one of the walls and does damage if you move far enough, and like everyone gains fly and gets worse at melee and stuff like that. And it's just kind of like you could be killed by the environment. Objective markers exploding, just all sorts of crazy business. We've done a bunch of playtesting with that, and it's been really fun. So I'm excited to see how that goes on Friday.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll be out watching the most competitive kill team this side of the world, it looks like.
Yes.
And hopefully Adrian will make it out of group stages, right?
There's a lot of pressure, but I'm just gonna go and do my absolute best.
Yeah, just always play your best at any tournament, and make sure you're not trying to accidentally cheat. Make sure you play slow, know the rules, and be gracious.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because at the end of the day, like it's easy to get heated in the moment, but like whenever you always feel bad afterwards, and it's never worth it, right? Like it's never worth it to like be salty or mean or like try and like get that extra half an inch when you really don't have it, because like at the end of the day, like the game finishes and then you snap out of that and then just feel like terrible. I mean, maybe not everybody feels terrible about it, but like I would if I ever did that.
Yeah, definitely better to feel bad than not.
I've definitely accidentally cheated before. I've definitely, what happened on stream at LVO, you were watching and somebody was like, hey, there's this guy yelling on stream that you're doing something illegal and he wants us to tell you about it.
Yeah. I think this year, I was like out on like the other side of the planet, like, oh, I guess I should watch the stream. I see Adrian like with a concealed intercessor get killed by a melt-a-gunner, and Adrian's like, I'm gonna shoot the crack, and I was like, no, he's on conceal.
Because I'm just so used to like, you get into these like habits of like, I usually am always on engage for that scenario. I'm just going to do it. And like, you don't think about it. And like your opponent maybe is too tired to catch it. And like, so it's definitely like good to like always review your rules every so often to like in. And I think the other thing I did accidentally was
your charge
and killed someone and then dash, because I was like, intercessors, 3 APL, like I can do what I want. Like thankfully none of those affected the game, and thankfully like Travis actually was a hawk and caught both of them. But like it can happen, and you just
it's important to remember
happen.
People can make accidental things, and everyone is allowed to make mistakes, and it's not, you shouldn't be chastised or crucified for mistakes, but knowing that people make mistakes and being aware that people make mistakes is really important in these kinds of games, and being gracious and being soft, like having a soft landing pad. You shouldn't really be calling people cheaters unless you see it a lot, unless you see them like get caught and then do it again. It's
right.
You know, right. It's just not one of these games where everything can be perfect all the time, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a game that strives to be like perfect with measurements, but we're like, it's not like a chessboard situation with an exact square and everybody's human and things get like bumped. So like, yeah, it's definitely have like a constant ongoing conversation just to make sure everybody's on the same page at all times. Intent is clear. So if anything does come bumped or knocked over and something is all of a sudden not in cover, you're like, hey, no, remember when we both agreed before that this is where he was and he wasn't covered? And you're like, oh yeah, I do remember that. So
yeah.
So
do you feel like do you feel like more aggressive players or more cagey players tend towards these kinds of like rules by intent, or people trying to catch people on these like millimeter things? Do you feel like it's a play style thing, or do you feel like it's just things happen and some people get caught in the heat of the moment?
I think trying to catch people on millimeters is definitely like a personality trait. Like for me, I'm not going to ever argue millimeters with someone. Like I think when it comes down to a half an inch or quarter of an inch, like that's important, right? Like if I think you're just barely within a 9-inch, 8-inch charge plus 1-inch engagement by holding a ruler over something, I would break out, the 1-inch tokens and measure that out, because that's genuinely important. And a half an inch does matter, even if you thought you were close enough. But like, I think it's also, I mean, I've come across a variety of like different players. I think that the best people, the people I love to play the most, are just like very honest, and I could leave the board and not worry that they would be moving anything an extra half an inch or anything else like that. Like and they make their moves, and I know that player could say, oh, like, do you think this is close? I think this is probably close enough, but this player is like, no, I know that I'm a quarter inch off. I'm not going to try and make that charge, like that kind of thing. I think it's probably a mix to answer your original question. It comes down to partially personality, because I've seen some people who like play a lot of TTS and are like hyper precise. And then some people who are like, dude, like it's close enough, just go for it. Like, I'm not going to argue, yeah, I mean, it's both, but, the important thing is to like, just kind of who you're up against and like talk to the beginning of the game about what kind of game you want to have. Like, I'll always say, hey, like, I've never played you before. It's nice to meet you. Like, this is kind of how I play usually. Dice always go in the dice tray. If they fall out, even if it's a favorable, like whatever the result, we're re-rolling it in the dice tray. If it's cocked, check with the other person before we just pick it up and re-roll it. Let's always pre-measure things, even if it seems obvious to you. Another player may feel like it's too much or too little, Show the other opponent you can do the movement. Talk about intent constantly, that kind of thing. I mean, it comes to intent with millimeters. Like if it's like way off, then like, yeah, you have to, observe what the game state is. But if it's close enough, like I always give the benefit to intent. If it's like really, really close, I'm like, look, we talked about it. We agreed. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, maybe for this week's niche tactics, we could talk about tournament etiquette or sweat etiquette.
Ooh, sweat etiquette. Okay.
Sweat etiquette. Yes.
Because I think actually this came up a little bit at New York Open. Just kind of like, we had a couple of new players show up into the tournament scene, and some of them maybe came in a little bit too hot, or maybe a little bit too confident in their interactions with some other players, which could have led to other people misinterpreting. I think when you go to these large tournaments, if you really haven't played that many games against that many teams, or even you've only played like one game against a team, it's really important to just be like, look, I'd really want very, very clear rules for everything, rather than just like, oh, I kind of know what's going on, don't worry about it. Because, ultimately, it's very much one of those things where if you don't ask the right questions, a good player doesn't technically need to answer them perfectly if they think that you're confident, right? Like if you come into a table, you're like, oh, I've played a bunch, I know all the rules, don't worry about me. You like if you had that player come into a game against you, Adrian, you probably wouldn't be as forthcoming with all the rules, right? If someone's coming in
like
super...
that, well, it's happened before, and then he quit the tournament.
Yeah.
After I was like, I thought you knew what you were doing. I'm sorry. Like I put my breacher out here, and I was like, all right, your turn. And I gave him an APL, and I was like, all right, your turn. I was like, okay, I'm gonna dynamite these 4 guys. And he was like, oh crap, you could do that. I was like, so like, yeah, it's definitely important for like newer players. And again, like I wasn't like trying to be like mean. I just like you said, like he came in. I said, do you need any explanations? He's like, nope, I got it. I know this. And I was like, all right. And like, he looked like he painted his guy as well. And you never know. Like, I just assumed like he was a good player. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give this my all, and then it turned out not to be the case. But any event, I think it's important if you're a newer player, definitely to like be like ask questions. Don't be like, don't try and appear like you know more than you do.
Try to be
At
cool.
the end of the day,
There's nothing to be gained, right, Jason? Like for a new player going to these tournaments, you don't have to be the guy that knows everything. It's totally fine to ask questions.
And everybody, I've never come up against anybody who like is mean about it and is like, no, I will not explain this to you. Like I'd say like 90% of the people you play against, even if they beat you, are like happy to sit with you for like 15 minutes after the round and go over everything that they might have done differently, or like how the way they see it or their tips. And I've done that with a lot of people, like even as recently as NYO. And I'm like happy to do it. And it's part of being a community. There are some people who definitely are more resistant to it, but that's just probably a personality. But like, for newer players, the only situation I could see them coming into a little bit of a gray zone is if you came up against a good player who wasn't really like happy explaining everything to you. And, but if you need something in this game, don't be ashamed to push for it or ask. Or like if someone's giving you a hard time, call it to you over. I learned that the hard way. And I thought I could solve everything myself. And it's not always easy because you're heat of the moment. You don't have a bird's eye view of the situation. You're not impartial. And instead of trying to like de-escalate a situation yourself that you're really not like qualified to de-escalate, like TOs are there to help. Definitely ask them if you have any questions or issues with your opponent or anything else like that.
Yeah, I think, for me, that's the reason why I don't like playing in my own tournaments, because I want to make sure that I can see people when they have questions. I think at this year's New York Open, we had a guy who bumped into the rules a couple times, and I wish that he called me, in way earlier, because by the time I caught the interaction, it was like 4 or 5 interactions deep. Someone had like their rule book. They were clearly like not happy with the state of the game. They were reading their opponent's rules, like, maybe for the first time. And it just was too far gone for me to really de-escalate that situation. And it kind of ended up bleeding into the day after. So, if you're going to these larger tournaments and the TO is gracious enough to not be a TO that's playing, make sure to ask questions. And even if it's a TO that's playing their games, make sure to ask questions, because, that's why you're paying money to go to these tournaments. You're not going so you can just play the exact same game. You're playing so that you can have someone help you out and, adjudicate your games. That's why we're there.
And also, like, what I've learned too is like if you pull up an app like Waha, Wahapedia, and you have like whatever faction you're going against that given game, like pull up a set of the rules. Something just like seems too good to be true or seems weird, just take 10 seconds and look it up. And you can explain your, like, if your opponent gets mad at you, then they're probably like, no, they're doing something wrong anyway. Like, nobody should get mad at you for double checking. Just explain, I'm a newer player. I don't know this rule. I just like to verify for my own learning, right? And I do that all the time still to this day.
I'm always constantly checking my rules, my opponent's rules.
Yeah.
I think, luckily when I'm playing nowadays, most of the time I know everyone's rules, which is great.
Right.
But I still check my own. Like, we were practicing, a couple matchups. I have Wahapedia up on my phone and I'm constantly checking stuff just because, it can't hurt.
Definitely can't. And like even, people who are really skilled pilots still occasionally make misplays and mistakes with even like the core game rules too. So it's always good to have people holding themselves accountable for rules and scoring in the game too. Like both people should keep track.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, it looks like we are running out of time for today. But before we call it for the day, any final shout outs that you want to do for events? Any kind of final call outs?
No, I mean, Adrian, this is your space right now.
I don't know. All I'm doing is going to Atlanta, and then we're taking a long, nice, competitive break.
I mean, you've got your video on Amazon Prime still,
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, if anybody likes, I'm by day I am an independent filmmaker, and I specialize in like professional sports with an emphasis on motorsports, so sports car racing. I have a feature-length documentary that I produced, edited, filmed, directed, did everything on it. Took like 3 years of my life to do, to film it, to edit it, to get it out there. We had it in movie theaters last year across the country. It's streaming on a bunch of services, including Prime for free right now if you have a subscription. If you guys want to check it out and see what the local Killteam community is up to in their professional lives, the website is rookieseasonfilm.com. Like rookie,
actually a really good look inside of a race car. I mean, I watched it, and everything sounds great.
Yeah, the car sounds like a Michael Bay movie. It's just like amazing, like low pitched. It's the Chevrolet Camaro GT4R is the car. So actually, the car actually they can't see this video, but the Carball, it's got like a low, throaty American V8 exhaust, and on the inside, it's got a straight cut gearbox, and this is high pitched mechanical, like ear splitting whine. And it just makes for an amazing sounding car. And I got cameras in the car where like broadcast cameras can't even go. So yeah, it was pretty cool, and it was a really storybook season. So if anyone's interested in checking it out, pseasonfilm.com. Yeah, would love to shoot me an email or drop me a message on wherever, and let me know what you thought.
On our part, we've got our Patreon and our Discord, and Lester's Workshop making our Just Another Kill Team podcast cage. Anything else, Jason, outside of Renegade Wargaming in a weekend? Or this week, I guess, when this comes out?
Yeah, it'll be coming up this week. Yeah, that's pretty much it over here.
Oh, last call out. The Goonhammer is actually running the 2004 or 2003 end of the season UTC Kill Team Championships out in, I think, Maryland or in the DC area. And I'll be hosting that tournament. So in case anyone's looking for a tournament that is not LVO on the East Coast, it'll be January 13, 14. And I'll try to drop a link in the show notes.
Nice. That sounds sick.
Otherwise, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Thanks for coming on.